How do you fix water?
Well, it's tough. You know, we don't lack water. That's one thing Georgia doesn't lack, is we got plenty of water. The problem is geography. Our water goes elsewhere. You know, our water goes to Alabama. I mean, Georgia's borders largely are rivers. So you got the Chattahoochee on the west bank, and you got the Savannah and all the other tributaries there on the other bank with South Carolina. And they feel that they have, you know, that part of that water is theirs, and it is. But this debate isn't about water. The debate between Georgia and Alabama and Florida is about Atlanta and economic growth. And if they can cripple Atlanta by slowing our economic growth and development down, and water is probably our Achilles heel because of that, of the access that they have, then they can make a case. Their economic development team can run around and say, you don't go to Atlanta, you know, they're not going to have any water in a few years. They're going to be totally dry. So there's some ulterior motives here that make this much more difficult to solve than just water. But you know, in the end, you know, and it's tougher to do than it was 50 years ago. We built the interstate system, the interstate highway system in this country between 1956 and 1970. 44,000 miles of concrete and asphalt in 14 years. You can't build a pond in the state of Georgia because of environmental regulations and other issues, the red tape, in 14 years. So the dynamic, the world has changed. There was a time when you just say, all right, go put a dam across the Ocoee River and then pipe the water down I-20 and be done with it. You can't do that anymore. So it's a much more complex problem, but it has less to do with water than the fact that we've been so successful in economic development. And you know, you can't solve that problem because we don't want to give up the golden goose here. So
You've had a great career.
It's been phenomenal. It's, you know, like I say, I marvel at the things that I've been able to do and be part of.
What do you consider your greatest accomplishment?
The flag. I mean, truthfully, you know, being a key part of taking that was such an emotional issue. My grandmother was from Toccoa, Georgia. Her grandfather was one of 6 brothers who left North Georgia in the early 1860s, and only one of them came home. Fortunately, he had children before he left because he didn't come home. And my grandmother grew up with her grandmother telling her all these stories about the Civil War and all the, you know, the lost cause and all the hardships and how awful the Yankees were to their family and all this sort of stuff. And my grandmother was the head of her United Daughters of Confederacy chapter till the day she died. She had the Confederate flag flying in the living room when she died. And she made sure me and my sisters were members of the UDC from the, you know, I probably somewhere still got a certificate from when I was 8 years old. So I grew up, my grandmother, you know, this being a very important part of her life, her culture, and my dad, to help her, Dad being a photographer, would go around we'd go to the different battlefields of the Civil War, and he'd take pictures and do movies so she could show it to all of her UDC chapter friends. So I grew up with a real understanding and appreciation of Southern culture and everything. But I also came to the conclusion that the South couldn't afford to keep looking in the rearview mirror. And there was a lot of things that I cherished. I mean, I was old enough to remember we're now in the sesquicentennial of the Civil War. I was 8 years old. I remember all the marches and the bands and everybody growing beards and putting the uniforms on. And in 1961, I was just a kid, but I remember all that. But I kept thinking, you know, we're looking in the rearview mirror, and we've got to. It's dividing the state. It's dividing, and it's making us. The world has changed, and we've got to be part of the 21st century. It's something that we can't put totally behind us, but we need to put in the proper perspective. And I think that putting the flag aside helped us begin to put that conflict and all the aftermath of it more in perspective. And so from that, like I say, it gave me a sense of redemption from having done something that bothered me from the time I did it. Mm-hmm. But that's probably the proudest I've been. And then just a lifelong being just a little bitty cog in a larger effort to try and transform Georgia politics. I mean, and to see, Sonny Perdue, who's a dear friend, I think he's been a good governor. He's operated under very difficult conditions. 5 of his 8 years have been down economic. There's nobody that I would have trusted to manage the state finances. He's done a good job of making the state function and operate. We've had some problems with some of our leaders, it's growing pains. I think we've weeded some of that out, and I'm hoping that now we'll live up to the aspirations that we all had. And it was about creating a better system of government in the state of Georgia. It wasn't about power and control for power and control's sake. It was about getting power to try and do something positive, to change the system and around conservative principles, but do good things with government. And I think that, you can't take, one of the things I've learned, I've lost some of my idealism. No, I haven't lost my idealism. It's been tempered by realism. I'm still very idealistic. I still believe that public service is one of the greatest callings that you can get involved in. I'm very idealistic still about it, but it's been tempered with realism. The realism being that people are flawed, people make mistakes, people do dumb things, people are sometimes malevolent. But if you get a group of people together and they're focused on a mission and an objective, and they have the right attitude, they're willing to work hard, and they're willing to work for a cause that's greater than themselves, they can do amazing things. And that's what I hope that I've spent my life doing, focusing on a cause that was greater than myself, putting everything I had into it, being part of a larger team, sometimes a small part, sometimes a larger part. But I'm hoping that when I look back, I can say it was all worthwhile. There have been times in the last couple of years when we'd have problems with some of our leaders. I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. And I felt really badly for people like the Bob Shaws and people that you probably don't even, the Maggie Hollemans. And these are little ladies and little men who spent their life in the trenches of the Republican Party and who believed in a greater cause. And to have that betrayed or disappointed or embarrassed broke my heart from times. But I think we got a good leadership team now. And I'm hopeful that when I look back at, and hopefully I got a few more decades to be involved in this, that I'll be proud, as proud at the end as I am today about what we were able to do.
Any regrets?
No, I could have, there are things that I could have stepped up and done. I might have, there was a time right after I was party chairman, if I decided that I'd wanted to run for governor, I don't know that Sonny would have run. We had to talk him into it. I could have stepped right up and said, I'm going to run for governor. I don't know that I could have won. Sonny was better positioned. So from that point of view, I don't, there are things that I look at, opportunities that I didn't go out and pursue. But I'm not disappointed that I didn't do that. I think that I've done the things that I wanted to do, mostly in the ways that I wanted to do them, and I feel, I'm never, like I say, I'm not going to be governor, lieutenant governor, I'm not going to be a U.S. senator, I'm not going to be a congressman. Those were options that may have been available to me at one time, at least to pursue them, maybe not necessarily get elected, but I could have pursued them. And I don't look back with any regret about not doing it. I've got friends like Tom Price and Phil Gingrey and Sonny Perdue and Johnny Isaacs and Jack Kingston, people who are contemporaries and colleagues in various, Lynn Westmoreland, all those, we all serve together. They're in those positions and they're doing a magnificent job. So I feel very good about what little I was able to do to help get them there.
Well, I know, Rusty, that we've forgotten something.
It's been 4 decades now, believe it or not. So we've covered a lot of territory in a short period.
Was there anything you'd like to say before we close?
No, thanks. I think as I told you before we started the camera, I think the timing of this is magnificent because we have a lot of people who were part of this that we're beginning to lose. And I just want to thank you and the university, the library system, for going in and capturing this before it's totally lost. not just from me, but from people who were involved in it at much earlier levels and times than I were. Those people were losing, and you're capturing a part of Georgia history that I think that was definitely transformational. Historians are going to be looking at the last 40 years to understand how we got here, what were the forces that were involved, and you're creating a magnificent resource tool for them to be able to do that. So I say thank you, and to the Vincent Institute and the library and everybody else who's been involved in this.
Well, thank you. And I want to thank you on behalf of the Richard B. Russell Library and the Young Harris College Library.
Thank you.